Hey everybody, welcome back to Landshark Garage. This episode, since we're having some supply chain problems getting parts, we're going to delve into this rear end. My fear is that since this sat in water, there's maybe some water in the rear end. We're going to pull the drums off, pull the axles out, take the cover off, drain it, make sure that we don't have water in there. Give us a chance to look at the bottom side of this. Did get a few patch panels in, but we're still waiting on a lot of other things. So we're going to get after this and take a look at things and see what we got going on underneath this. One place I was told to look was right in this. Since we have this hole up here that we found at the end of the last episode, I wanted to look at these spring buckets. We're going to have to disconnect that drive shaft. Forgot about that. We're going to look at these spring buckets. Make sure they're not all rotted out like the floorboard is. They really don't look too bad, actually. You'll see there's just, I think it's 3 bolts that hold that in. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 bolts that hold that spring pocket in. We're going to be doing some work there to make everything look a-okay. We'll go over and look at the other spring pocket. Just kind of want to look at the frame rails. That's kind of hooeyed up back there. Right along here. That looks like it actually hit something, but that's not too horrible of a deal. Hi guys, what are you doing, Jake? Them spring buckets look okay, huh?
Do they?
Yeah,
Good.
they look fine.
I'm wondering if it was wherever it was sitting, it was just like flood water that like came up and then subsided pretty quick.
Yeah, it looks like in this corner of the trunk they did the old expandifoam right here in the corner.
Yeah.
But I think it's just because it got tore apart. Otherwise, it's not bad underneath here. Not as bad as I was expecting. We had never been underneath this to even see what everything looked like. That noise you're hearing is a fat guy sliding on the floor. So the frame rails look okay. Brake line looks a little chewy. But you know what? We're not going to worry about that. We'll deal with that if it breaks. But that front bucket looks pretty good. The bulk of the rust we found was like, we can't figure out why it's there. It's just weird. But anyway, we're gonna pop this cover off, see what kind of fluid is inside of this. Hopefully it's not got a lot of water in it, I guess is what I should say. 8.5 inch Chevrolet rear end. You can tell that like in G bodies. If you look at these square corners right here, that's an 8.5 inch rear end, or 8.62. This molded in boss here tells you what housing that is. If it looks like it's got little fangs right here that stick down, that's a 7.5 inch or 7.62, and quite a bit of difference there strength wise. So this isn't a G body, but this is still an 8.5 inch rear end. All the 8.5 10 bolts are like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 bolt rear end. Okay. We know from finding the build sheet on this that it's got a pretty lame ass gear set in it. So, but my biggest concern right now is to make sure that everything inside of it looks good, that the bearings look good, and we got the time to do that now instead of doing it somewhere down the line when it breaks. So we'll get after that. 1/2 inch bolts hold that in. Once we get inside of there, we'll take the drums off, pull the axles out, take a look at the bearings on them. This episode of Dipshits Are Us, I've never had one pop off that easy. Holy.
What do you want, pig mat or?
Floor dry king again.
You want this floor dry?
Oh, look at that.
Ugh.
That's nasty.
Why are you touching it?
Oh, that had so much water in it.
Did you think it wouldn't?
Well, no, I was pretty sure that was gonna.
Oh, it smells.
There's actually a rust line inside of it. Can you see that, folks? See the rust line? That's yucky. Okay, that was awesome. Now, I gotta get around there and take that drive shaft off. I betcha I break a bolt when I do that. Yep, I almost count on it. Boy. Anyway, that's a lot of play in my world, but we're gonna leave it because this anemic rear end that's in here, gear wise, is really not that impressive anyway. So there's really no need to tear this. So let's do this. All right, this little pin right here goes through that cross shaft. When you pull that cross shaft out, this part right here is the end of the axle, and there's a clip, a C-clip in there. That's what holds this axle from whoop, shooting out that way, going down the road. It's the weak point in this axle because you can break them C-clips out doing burnouts, etc., and that axle will go boop, and the wheel will go with it, or it'll tear up your fender. But that's actually what holds that in. You take this bolt out, drop that cross pin out of them spider gears, push each axle in, pull the C-clip out, the axle will go right out, and you can set it out on the floor. Bearings are part of the axle when it comes out. The seal's part of the tube, so you can replace the seal. In the case of this one, if you look at the rust on that pinion and listen to that, this thing's got some issues. And like I said, the rear ratio on it, let's see if we can find that. Usually GM put that right there. And if you read that, it says 1641 and 9. It's also got a GM number on it, this rear gear ratio does, because the build sheet we found said it was like two somethings, two nastiness.
What?
We divide 41 by 16. Tell me what you come up with.
2.56.
Yeah, so it's got 256 gears in it. Great for mileage. We'll probably leave them in there till just for driving around to begin with, but I'm sure we'll be looking for something with a posi in it, not an open differential, you know, not a one wheel peeler, and especially looking at the rust and stuff that's on it. This will be fine for right now, but it's going to need to be replaced eventually. That sat pretty good. It's kind of weird. I was kind of hoping to see if there was a lot of water in it, but so you can see that rust line again right there on them bolts. See how they're rusty? And they're not. So obviously this was sitting about like this right here when it was in the water, and that rust translates to the inside of the gears too. You can just see it faintly on there. So I'm going to clean it up, put some different fluid in it. We'll take the drums off, take a look at the brakes and make sure, see if we need to replace anything in there, what we have to get together for that. Looks like the bump stop over there fell off. Got coil-over shocks on it. I'm sure they're great. Everything else underneath here is a lot better than I thought it was going to be going into it. I expected a lot more rust and chaos, and just not really seeing it. I don't recall what this is, like a muffler hanger. I can't remember if this had the muffler that went crosswise and then had the duals come out of it. I don't know. We don't need no stinking mufflers. Going that way looks good. This doesn't look too bad. So we put a new gasket on this. We're gonna put a little AC90 in it. Once we get everything tightened down. I kind of like to use a star pattern when I put these back on. You do it how you want to do it. The only thing left to do is put fluid in it, which I'm not going to forget to do because it's sitting on the bench out there. But I'm going to pull all this mess out of here so we can clean it up so I don't have to lay in it when I do put the fluid back in it. 3 quarts, that's about what an 8.5 holds. That's about what we have. Pure petroleum 80-90 fluid. Ugh. Hey honey, you want to grab this?
Yeah, decline.
Decline. No, I don't think I do. I actually am gonna need some more pig mat, babe. Okay. Cool thing I never knew about these Camaros. They don't use a U-bolt like a lot of axles do. It's just a bolt-on captive bolt in there. So you just take the nut off. We were talking about if we decided to switch rear ends or something. We're just spitballing, and yeah, you just take the 4 bolts off and take the rear end out of it without having to mess around with like torching off U-bolt and stuff like that, like you do on a lot of other rear ends. I'm trying to, she's loose, just won't come off of there. So I'll try and clean the end here up. Let's see. I don't know. There's never a good answer for this rusty stuff. Better than I thought. It's a little oily from the oil seal being out. Other than that, looks like could use a set of shoes. Everything else looks intact. Drum's a little hairy. Other than that, okay. So we decided we're gonna swap everything out. We already had the brake spring hardware. This shoe over here, shot. There's not much left of them. They've been sitting in water. So we're gonna start taking this all apart. So brake shoes are held on by nails, right here and right here. And this little tool is how you take it off. You turn it a quarter of a turn, and it releases this little washer and spring, and then there's a nail in the back of it. It's not always the best idea to do that right away, so I'm going to leave the back one in there, but I took the front one off so you see how to do it. And we're going to start disconnecting springs. I took pictures of this beforehand, and I'm not going to do the other side until this side is done. That way, if there's any question on, you know, what spring goes where and how it looks, because all the springs in the kit are color coordinated. These ones are all colored rust, so you really have to match them up with what spring goes where. And there are pieces of this that we'll have to reuse. My worry is we're going to get this out of here, and this brake adjuster down here is not going to be brake adjustable, and then we're going to be sitting waiting for parts. But we'll see as we get it apart. So they make a tool for all this stuff. Sometimes the best tool is just a 10-inch vice grips also, but I got them, so I'm going to try and use them just to remember how much I hate doing brakes. So that one, I try and leave them attached to the shoe as I take it off. Okay, with brake shoes, there's a primary and a secondary shoe. If you look at the new ones, the material on one, there's a lot more material on one shoe than there is on the other. They're exactly the same otherwise. All the cuts and stuff in them are the same, but the primary shoe and the secondary shoe are different size. The primary one is shorter. That goes to the front of your brake drum setup. The secondary shoe is longer and it goes to the back. That's important to remember. These actually were in right. A lot of times when you find them, they're not in right. They put the longer shoe in the front. But as that works, that shorter shoe is actually thicker, and it actually does more braking than the back one does, or so I've been told. So this little tool is angled, and it catches the end of that spring, and you can use it to pull the spring off that wire. Usually, sometimes this is where that 10-inch vice grip comes in, or a needle nose pliers, or regular pliers, or something along that lines, because it doesn't want to drop out of there. There we go. So let that one drop off like that. This little rod is attached to this actuator that turns this star wheel in the bottom that adjusts your brakes out, so that when you put it back together, you have it in, you adjust it out, and so you got just a little bit of drag on your shoes, on your drum. But as you drive, as you activate your brakes, it just slowly keeps it adjusted. So there it's an automatic adjuster. It keeps your brakes solid all the time until it's not working anymore. That's provided it does work. I don't know if this one did. So this is just another tool. It's made for stretching springs. Kind of does the same thing. This one I used before was a lot cooler. I don't know if it's cool, but I mean, seemed like it worked good. But a plier or a screwdriver isn't going to hurt either here. There we go. The only piece I need to keep, and I lose it. So then there's a rusted on piece that is holding these shoes onto that pin. Man, some of this stuff is nasty. So there's really nothing holding this shoe on now that we took that spring off. Take the nail out. Nail goes through the backing plate. And that's what that attaches to. And there's a brake bar in this one. Oh, that's nasty down there. It's almost like it sat in water, honey. Oh, there's another spring there, isn't there? All right. This tool's got a little window in it. It's supposed to help you see the end of that nail. Doesn't really work. Thought was good though. So this is that adjuster that big piece of rod was attached to. Spring that adjusts it. This is that star wheel that I was talking about. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to save that. See, then there's on this side where this mounts in here, there's like a big washer that holds that into it. This is called a brake bar. This goes across the inside between the two shoes and holds them solid, right? This piece that still is attached is part of the emergency brake. So when you pull your emergency brake, this activates all this stuff. This wheel cylinder, although gummy looking, it isn't leaking or anything, so I'm not going to mess around with it. If you ever do a job like this, do not lose these links. That's what these are called. I don't know what anybody else calls them, but in the parts world, they're called a link. And that's the piston inside that wheel cylinder pushes out on these links, and that's what activates your brake shoes. If you need to reorder them, they're getting very hard to find. So I'd even try and keep them if I tear stuff apart, just so that you have them, because there are different lengths. So this piece just turns in and out here. It doesn't really appear like it's going to. But if we got it started, it probably would. There's actually a hole in the backing plate with a rubber plug. So you can reach in and turn this little wheel.
I know that. I think I knew that. I did know that.
Oh yeah, I think because we did.
Pretty sure
we had to do it
the race
because
cars that way.
well, and we had to do the old rear end on the race car had that in it, but we had to do your 68 several times if I remember right. Oh, we just got to get this one out of there. Bingo! Bango! So this goes in here. This will go in here. And then I'm going to reuse this spring. So that is back like it's supposed to be. So when you buy these kits of springs, so this is for both sides. So theoretically, you need a red spring, white spring, blue spring, up spring, down spring, we spring, they spring. I don't know. Oh, there is a spring for that. Sweet. Sweet mother of pearl. I was thinking that this spring that goes across the self-adjuster came with like a self-adjuster kit. But it doesn't look like it does. So we're going to replace that. That's this one right here. Goes out. That one goes in like that. You know, none of this stuff's going to stay here. As soon as I pick it up there, it's all going to fall right down on the floor right there. So here's the new nails. I'll get rid of the old nails. I don't ever throw the old nails away. I probably got a whole drawer full of them. Nail for this side. There's a new spring that goes on this brake bar. The spring side goes to the primary, to the front. And then, for some reason, there's two different hold down springs. Two different sizes. So here's what I was talking about, the hold down spring. See the difference in the size? So I'm guessing this one is this one, which is the front or primary, and this one is this one, which is the secondary one. There's new cups for them. I have them. Getting that spring on that nail is probably the hardest thing. That's way harder than putting the springs back on. So now the challenge is to put all this fun stuff back together. And that's what we're gonna try to do. I bet there's guys out there that have a way of doing this that just is like, boom, they're done. I do not. I try to do one side and then put the other side in. So then that, you know, when you put your spring and stuff on there, that'll bring that all together. But that being said, you still have to make sure you got everything where it's supposed to be. So now this brake bar has to go in here just like that. What the brake bar does, when you hit the emergency brake, which nobody does that anymore, but anyway, when you hit it, it pushes this bar against the primary shoe, holds it against the drum, and that's what holds you for an emergency brake. We got this all cleaned up, so it's freed up and working. So we will put that back in. Get all done here. Trying to get all the tools in one spot. Don't have my surgical assistant with me. So that goes in that brake bar. Just like that. Then we go into the links. You remember the links. This spring's got a pigtail on it. This one's going to be 9 times as hard to push. So here's the rule of darn brakes. If something's really simple, it can't be right. Let's see if we can get everything where it's supposed to be. Get this drawn up where it's supposed to be. Like this. Come on. They got an edge they got to ride on. As long as nothing falls off that nail, you're in pretty good shape. As long as you get the link in there. I bet there's old timers out there that do this. Used to do this in their sleep. Okay. You know, once you get your springs in here, it's all good and that's what that's actually for. Just to pry that up over it, but I didn't think it would work. I really didn't. A lot of guys just leave these brake bars off. They don't even think about putting them back in just because it's a pain in the butt to try and line it up. It's there for a reason, but I'm pretty damn sure that the emergency brakes in this thing are not going to work. Pretty sure. So the trick now is to get this to all go back and sit in the right spot so that I can pop that spring around there. So, the only thing we have left to do is to get this guy in there. So that I can check my text from my wife. And that is not the way to do that, boys and girls, but gotta remember to put fluid in there. Everything is as it should be. Amazing. Oh, I don't know if I'm gonna have to adjust it. Let's take a look at this. That was fun. Now I'll take the rubber plug out of the back of this, and you just use a screwdriver, run that star wheel up so this isn't like super loose like this, you know what I mean? So it's got some tension on it. And I'm gonna move on to the other side. I'm not gonna bore you with that though, because it's gonna do the same thing over there that it did over here. If I run into problems, we'll put it in, well, another episode. So that's what we've got. New brakes on the back of the 80 Camaro that we know needs some rear end work. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. We'll do the brakes on the other side, get everything set up, make sure all our brakes are working good. Hopefully we're getting to a point now where things are warming up outside, so we'll be able to pull this outside, hit it with the pressure washer, see exactly what we got going on underneath, get our painting and stuff done. We're having a blast with this project. Got to get my seat bottoms, get some patchwork done down here. But hey, thanks for following along. We really appreciate it. Never forget, drive your shit. We'll see ya.